subscribe to Plunder.
Let's talk about Chris Watts's newly leaked unredacted discovery and the 70 seconds of silence that were previously hidden that have now been revealed. And we'll talk about why Chris Watts said, if you ask Shanann, horrible. Now that Chris Watts' dad, Ronnie Watts, has made a trip to Colorado, more bits and pieces of the discovery are leaking all over the World Wide Web. Those of us who followed the case since Chris Watts' porch interview day in August 2018 have seen plenty of facts about this case over the years. Now, while certain quote-unquote new leaks were not really new at all, others are completely new to the public. Now, these 20 photos listed, titled The People's Sentencing Exhibit, were provided to me in PDF form directly from the Weld County DA's office years ago. Although some of us have seen these photos since the first discovery release, others have commented that they never saw them before. It gives us an idea of if Watts' case would have gone to trial, what would have been shown in court. However, freshly unredacted discovery facts that haven't been seen by any of us, those new or old to the case, are leaking now, March 2021. Nearly 3 years later, more hidden things are emerging, including 70 seconds of silence which previously were removed from Chris Watts' interview on August 15th. Now, on August 14th, 2018, Chris Watts didn't get much sleep. That was a Tuesday. Therefore, he sat for a 5-hour-long polygraph and interview and prep the following day. August 15th was a really long day for Chris Watts, having already given television interviews the previous day, wearing that same North Carolina shirt that Shanann bought him. I often wonder why he didn't change clothes from Tuesday to Wednesday, but he probably didn't bring extra clothes along on Tuesday night with him when he slept at the home of his friends. Too afraid to stay in the Saratoga Trail house another night after that strange experience he told author Shanann Cadle he'd had on Monday night when all the house lights came on by themselves, forcing him to go downstairs and sleep on the couch in fear. Watts would mention all the lights being on in the house during his interview with CBI agent Tammy Lee. Before we delve into that part of the interview, let's talk about what Chris Watts told Shanann Cadle about that August 14th night. You can find the link to her book below if you want to read the whole thing. In the meantime, on this previously released form, it always gets me that Chris Watts' marital status is listed as a widower. Chris Watts had written, I don't like saying stuff like that over the phone because I'm never certain when they screen my calls. I know already I told you the vision I had before August 13th, so even prior to that Monday, that fateful, horrible day where he committed the crimes, Chris Watts told Cadle that he had already had a vision about what was to come. I know I already told you the vision I had before August 13th when I was lying in bed and all the lights were on in the loft and downstairs and I felt so alone. That's exactly what happened April 14th when I was lying in bed. That should read August 14th. That's exactly what happened August 14th when I was lying in bed. So I love this quote that Shanann included in her book, you will never meet a murderer that isn't afraid of a ghost. It's as if the crimes will continue to haunt a person until they repent. She wrote, the evil force that he thinks was pursuing him was also living in his home. Christopher feels this was a force that kept causing him to have a reoccurring dream. In the weeks leading up to the murders, this disturbing dream made him realize there was something that was coming after him. He realized it had been chasing him until it caught him. He would dream he was lying on their bed asleep. He would wake up in his dream and all of the lights in his house were on. They were on upstairs and downstairs. Then in his dream, he would realize he was all alone, that his family was gone and it was just him. The dream gave him an awful feeling. Somehow he knew that dream was going to come true. Was this his mind preparing him? Or was it God's warning? Sure enough, the night of August 13th, the night after he had just done away with his family that morning, he said he turned off all the lights and went to bed. He woke with a start and realized all of the lights in the house were on. He knew he had turned them off before lying down. Let's read one more passage that talks about those lights before we get into Christopher's interview the next day and what he left out. Or rather, what police left out until now. The first thing that came to his mind was that he was all alone and his family was gone, Shanann Cato wrote. Wow, what a reality check. This was his dream exactly. He laid downstairs the rest of the night. He was so creeped out he could feel the spirit in his home. Who turned on all of the lights? He said he did not, and was convinced for sure there were evil spirits there. We know this is true because in one of the police reports they said an officer sat outside all night. He made a note in his report that all of the lights in the house were on. Could Christopher have been sleepwalking and turned the lights on, or was this the work of what he says was in his home? It's said that sometimes a dark spirit will follow a person around for a while. On the morning of August 14th, Christopher woke up very early in the morning to find himself lying on his bed, feeling totally alone. How could he explain the lights were on in the house when he knew he had turned them off? He was completely creeped out by this and went downstairs to lie on the couch to rest until morning. He was not feeling sad or remorseful. He just wanted to be able to get on with his life. His dream came to him, but the difference this time was he realized it wasn't just a dream. He really was alone. He thought to himself, how could he justify his family gone, and the only feeling he had was relief. As he looked around his house, wondering how it was that he didn't miss them or wish they were back, he looked at the pictures on the walls, but it still did not register. It did not bring back memories. He realized he had a headache and went into the kitchen to fix himself something to eat. He opened the refrigerator, took out a couple of eggs and scrambled them. When he sat down to eat, the phone rang. It was the police wanting to know if he had heard anything. It was hard to explain the family disappearance. It's not like he cleaned out a room and threw away something important. He had cleaned out his house and thrown away his family. Did he really believe he and Nikki could be happy after he had done something like this? What could possibly have been going through his mind? So that sets the stage for Monday and Tuesday. And now we're going to move into Wednesday when Chris Watts met CBI agent Tammy Lee, and how this whole motif of his emotionless being came into play. As for the symbolism that occurred on August 14th and even potentially the 13th of August, Chris Watts could not get away from what he'd done. First off, Shanann Cato often mentions the fact that it was a very windy time and 3 trash cans blew into Chris Watts' yard, as if God was warning him that he should not have thrown away his family. Also, if you visit the link below to the YouTube channel Unjustified, you will see an interview with the Lindstroms, and Jeremy Lindstrom once again mentions the fact that when he left Chris Watts' home that Monday, after coming over to show support, he found it symbolic that there was a dead bird right there when he walked outside. The actual testing portion with CBI agent Tammy Lee and Chris Watts didn't last long, but the pre-questioning and post-questioning and everything in between lasted 5 hours. If you want to watch the entire video in sequence, check it out. I've linked to it below. It's titled Chris Watts Full 5-Hour Polygraph. Shanann's boss said she embezzled money, she had a wall of shoes. Those are just a few of the things Watts speaks about in the 5-hour-long interview. Back then, 70 seconds of silence was included, and those 70 seconds of silence have finally been revealed. Let's discuss what they talked about during those 70 seconds of silence. If you watch the entire thing, you will note that Tammy Lee is completing a form asking Chris Watts about his condition. And Tammy says, "Yeah, you're obviously not pregnant." Chris Watts answered, "Nope." She began to ask him if he had eaten anything in the previous 24 hours. Chris Watts answered that he had a pizza last night and a protein shake this morning, and that's it. And she went on to ask, "What time did you have the pizza?" He said, "Right when I left here." So obviously he had been there the night before at the same police station. He said, "Right when I left here, it was like 11 o'clock. "Okay, and then what time did you have the protein shake?" "Probably about 7:30 this morning." She asked, "Was that all with your 3-step process?" "Mm-hmm," Chris Watts said, because by then he had explained to her the 3-step Thrive process. And she asked, "What time did you go to bed last night?" He said, "Probably about 12:30, after midnight." "And what time did you get up?" He said, "Probably around 5, and just kind of looked at my phone." That's when she asked, "Okay, and you said the other Amanda and Nick, that's where he stayed." And when she started to ask him how he would rate his sleep, good, fair, or poor, and he says, "Is there anything between poor and fair?" Tammy said, "I'll put it in the middle." Now this is where the redaction came in, and it's important to look at Chris Watts' mental state. Tammy had asked him, "Okay, have you ever been a patient in a mental hospital before?" Chris Watts answered no. She went on to ask, "Have you ever seen a psychologist or a psychiatrist for any reason, even as a kid?" He said no. She asked, "Do you have any heart problems?" He said no, not that I know of. Then she asked, "Okay, do you have any communicable diseases or are you contagious with anything?" He said no. Then Tammy starts joking a little bit about that question about asking Chris Watts at that point if he was contagious with anything. Tammy said, trying to keep the levity and the connection, she said, "I don't know why they have us ask this, like towards the end." I'm like, "I probably need to know that, like right when you sit down, but..." And Chris answered, "Yeah, before I come in the room." And she continued to quip, "As you're sitting on my pad, the pad polygraph thing. Yes. Has anyone ever told you you have high or low blood pressure?" It's like Chris began to answer no, but then he stopped himself and says, "When I was overweight," because they will talk about his weight loss from 245 pounds down to 180 pounds at that point. Okay, but now, Chris Watts didn't know whether he had high or low blood pressure. I'm assuming it may have been high when he was overweight, but he doesn't quite answer many questions directly with concise answers. Chris answered, "I haven't really been to no doctor since I lost weight." Tammy advised, "You should go back just to..." And Chris interrupted and said, "I know. Get that changed in your chart." "I don't..." "Yeah," he said. "What about seizures? Have you ever had seizures before?" "No," he answered. How's your hearing?" she asked. It is at this point when Chris Watts says, if you ask Shanann, horrible." Tammy went on to say, "Selective hearing or..." And then Chris Watts said, "Well, I would say fair." "Okay. Or is that not in the box or no?" Tammy said, just if you had any hearing problems. So I'll just say that you said it was fair. That's fine." Chris went on to explain, "I work in the oil field, so it gets kind of loud." "Yeah," Tammy said. "Especially working on cars with air hammers. It gets pretty loud," Chris said. Tammy questioned, "Do you use ear protection at all?" Chris said, "I do." And then Tammy said, "The rigs." "Mm-hmm," Chris Watts said. Tammy went on to ask, "Okay, any current back problems at all?" "No," Chris Watts answered. "Have you had any alcohol within the last 24 hours?" "No." So he said he hadn't had anything to drink alcoholic in the previous 24 hours from August 15, 2018. Then she went on to ask, "Do you drink alcohol?" And Chris Watts answered, "Only with, like, if I'm going out somewhere or like with friends coming over, I don't drink by myself." "Okay, I don't really think that's..." And he stops himself. And that's when she goes on to ask, "How often would you say you drink in a given week? Like how many beverages would you have?" Now at this point, that's when the audio pops back on in the version of the discovery we were initially given. Certain things that stick out to me are that the fact that Watts was able to joke about Shanann at that point and reveal his sort of derision about her contempt for his hearing problems. We know Shanann would say he doesn't listen. Now, whether that's actually selective hearing or not is one interpretation. But the fact that he was able to joke about Shanann at that point, revealing his derision about her contempt for his hearing problems, as well as keep the statement in the present tense, at least according to the transcripts, is kind of mind-boggling. Will we get to hear the actual audio to confirm those were his words? At times, we've seen where the transcript differs from the audio and things get lost in translation. I've also linked to Nicole Kassinger's video below, her full interview, and we know that she admits that she was the one to give Chris Watts the idea that he should have his friend Dave Colin, who is somehow affiliated with law enforcement, come sit outside the home all night just in case Shanann came back home Monday night. So whether that's the same officer who witnessed the lights on in the Watts home, I'm not clear about. But the fact that, again, Watts was able to joke about Shanann saying, well, if you ask Shanann, yeah. If you ask her, my hearing's horrible. At that point, if he were innocent and he just knew his wife was missing and his children were missing, it might be a little disturbing that he would be able to joke. But knowing what he knew in his mind at that point, what he had already done, and for him to still be able to joke with levity and be able to say, if you ask Shanann, my hearing's horrible, at that point, knowing what he had already done to his wife and children, it reaches a level of disturbance that really makes you wonder what is wrong with him. Watts gives himself away at some points in the interview. Again, if you want to watch the whole 5 hours, which I've been refreshing myself with today since I hadn't watched it in years, if you want to watch the whole thing, click the link below. But Watts does give himself away that he's lying at certain points in the interview, a day that he would look back upon and correctly guess that he was never leaving that room a free man once he walked inside. His conscience was obviously eating at him. When explaining to CBI agent Tammy Lee to think of shenanigans when pronouncing Shanann's name, he hesitates to try and keep his language in the present tense. He speaks about his nicknames, being called Rain Man at work. About being called Rain Man at work, Watts begins to regale Tammy with scenes of his grandma quizzing him on state capitals as they waited for his sister Jamie to emerge from school when they were in middle school. Throughout the interview, Watts also talks about weighing 245 pounds in 2015, and how he was all the way down to 180 pounds at that point on August 15, 2018. So he had been able to drop 65 pounds within 3 years, which is quite a feat. He also began to tell her how much the non-GMO Thrive vitamins and minerals helped him lose weight. But for some reason, Watts did not wear his patch that day. Tammy had asked if he had any on. Perhaps it was because he had spent the night over Nick and Amanda's home and he was out of his routine. But he still had the wherewithal to, have his protein drink, and according to Sherilyn Cadle's book, get up and make eggs that Tuesday morning. The revelation that Watts has never been a patient in a mental hospital, nor has he ever seen a psychiatrist or a psychologist for any reason, according to him, at that point in 2018, or even as a child, makes his crime even more baffling. Of course, there could be plenty of undiagnosed and untreated problems that he suffered from and was unaware of for years. It makes you question and wonder, does he have borderline personality disorder? Sociopathy? According to Psychology Today, sociopathy refers to a pattern of antisocial behaviors and attitudes, including manipulation, deceit, aggression, and a lack of empathy for others. That one comes across strong to me, seemingly a lack of empathy for others. even while being this yes man, kowtowing to his wife's every whim. They seem counterintuitive, but they're almost like two trains running on the same track, opposing each other but running at the same time. Or does he have antisocial personality disorder? It's a mental health disorder characterized by a disregard for other people, and those with ASPD may begin to show symptoms in childhood, but the condition can't be diagnosed until adolescence or adulthood. So maybe he did have some obviously antisocial traits. His family has spoken about that, but they haven't spoken of him committing any crimes or getting into any trouble, not harming any animals nor other children when he was young. Those with antisocial personality disorder tend to lie, break laws, act impulsively, and lack regard for their own safety or the safeties of others. Those symptoms may reduce with age, so it can be treated with talk therapy and the support of affected family members. But as you watch Chris Watts' long interview that Wednesday, August 15th, you will discover he has a boring and bizarre way of speaking. For example, there's one portion where he listed a long list of people who, quote, showed support, and he continued to say that same line. For example, Mary showed support, Adam showed support, John showed support. You know, I'm making up those names, but that was the way he recited it. He didn't vary his way of speaking. Watts doesn't have an extensive vocabulary, or he can't describe his feelings adequately. Instead, he falls back on euphemisms such as type thing, you know, it's a doo-doo-doo type of deal, such and such type of deal type thing, or he'll say that a lot, or he'll just say it instead of more descriptive words. It causes quite a bit of confusion. He does slip up at times. When they start talking about any cheating or infidelity potentially going on Shanann's side, Chris said, I never had an inkling that she would do the same, do anything to me. So he caught himself. He has a lot of tells where he thinks he's smart and he's not showing too much emotion, as if he's a poker player who's not giving away his hand, but he actually is. It's very monotone. We can see what so many people have said about Chris Watts and the way he's speaking during confessions, during emotional times, during any time, how he keeps a monotone level of speaking. He only laughs when he says he wants his family home, giving up that duper's delight. He calls Nico the kid quite a bit. Now I know he can claim that him and Shanann weren't really telling people the baby's name yet, but the way he refers to Nico is sad. It's reminiscent of that same Tuesday interview when the reporter asked him about Shanann being pregnant with Nico, revealed on national TV, and you can hear Chris's breathing change and he gets angry.
There's a baby on the way.
Mm-hmm.
That you're about to have a third child.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of going through your mind right now too?
That's why I want everybody back.
But strange things that Chris Watts said was, Shanann told him you can't have sex every day when trying to conceive, but you have to wait a couple of days in between. He said, there's times we went like a month or two without having sex. He said I would try, and she was tired or she was just aggravated with something that was going on, and tell him not tonight. Chris Watts told Tammy that he was the type to initiate sex but was often shot down. That's what Watts claimed about his sex life with Shanann, yet Shanann's friend Nicole Atkinson told police that the Watts were so hot and heavy, at least according to Shanann's account, before Shanann left for North Carolina, that they even did it in the pantry. Other things we can look forward to in this whole revelation of everything that's happening right now with this Watts case is a podcast or blog from Chris's sister titled Jamie's Journey. I'm also wondering if any additional videos will be revealed, what's all coming forward. Obviously, Ronnie Watts had some success with requesting the unredacted discovery from Weld County because this is what's being put out to the public now. Growing up, Watts continued to tell Tammy that he attended a First Baptist church with his family nearly every weekend, and he was the proverbial good boy compared to his so-called rebellious sister. Boy, haven't times changed. He waxed nostalgic about his first date with Shanann, where he wore camo gear and shorts to a fancy movie theater with a doorman. Then their second date to a Kid Rock concert was also a wardrobe fail when he accidentally wore the same outfit because he forgot what he wore the first time. He also forgot his ID, so he had to run 2 miles to the car and back to get back into the army base where the concert was. He was soaking wet from sweat. The third date was at Myrtle Beach, and Watts screws up when he then says Shanann had lupus. It's almost as if he's trying to tell you what he wanted to do away with, what things bothered him. So he didn't say, okay, Shanann has lupus, we really gotta find my wife. He's saying she had lupus. He was referring to her in the past tense as he recalled her falling asleep on his lap on the several hours long home ride years ago on their third date. When Shanann told me about the third child, Watts goes on to say, without calling Nico by his name, that's a constant. He doesn't seem like he has any love for Nico at all. And then again, another point when Tammy asks about how much money they make, Chris Watts says that Shanann made, he says she made, oh, and then he corrects himself, she makes about as much as I do. Chris went on to say that he rubbed Shanann's shoulders lightly. That was the way to wake her up, because she'll give me the alligator one-eye thing, like open an eye, if he learned to wake her up the wrong way. And he learned not to assume certain things because he didn't want to make Shanann mad. He also said he took a random guess on their credit card debt at that point. It was $8,000 to $10,000 according to Chris Watts. He didn't know much about their finances, he admitted, because he said Shanann told him he'd made the stupidest mistake ever by selling that vehicle or four-wheeler at one point for less than he owed on it back in the day. He didn't even know how much debt was discharged in his previous bankruptcy. So he went on to explain more and more about their relationship, and he went on to make errors. Obviously, he was lying. And now that we finally have these 70 seconds we've been missing, the question is, what will be revealed next?
Where'd you get that shirt?
Oh, this is I think she got it off Amazon, but this is my favorite college sports team.
Wasn't she just there?
She was just in North Carolina. Yep. So she actually probably got it from there. Usually she gets stuff from Amazon, but this one, I like these shirts a lot.
There you go, Deuteronomy 7:9. Know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is the faithful God, keeping his covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commandments. We will see. Please keep updated by subscribing. Visit all the links below, and we'll keep track of this process. With Chris Watts allegedly having a new lawyer and wanting to file a 35C motion, this story isn't going away anytime soon. Thanks for watching.